welcome back to the Got Freedom podcast. It is a joy to have everyone here today. I'm especially excited about today, not only because we have an incredible guest, but because we are kicking off the new year and a theme where we are looking into America from an immigrant's perspective. And we are specifically looking into the cost of freedom, the value of freedom, and the importance of it. And so today we have Jonathan. And Jonathan, I'm afraid I'm going to butcher your last name, but I'm going to try. So give me 1 second here. Jonathan Uzcategui.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Very nice.
Uzcategui?
Uzcategui.
Uzcategui.
Yeah.
Jonathan Uzcategui. And it is a privilege to have him here with us today. Jonathan, you are a small business owner. You have 3 wonderful children. You've moved here from Venezuela. You lived there during the transition. And now you're stepping up and you're saying, this is important for us to look at in America. Thank you so much for being here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jonathan. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. I came to the United States a couple decades ago. I am a proud American, Venezuelan American now, and I live in North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina. And, I'm very excited to be here and to share a little bit of my experience from Venezuela with you guys.
Jonathan, thank you. When you were growing up, what was it like? What was it like growing up in Venezuela?
Well, growing up in Venezuela was pretty, now that I get to compare this country to my country, it was a really good country. It was a lot of, things pretty similar to what we have here in one point. And gradually things have started to get really, you're not safe, in this, in that time when, I decided to come here to the United States, when I noticed that things are starting to get really, really bad in Venezuela. We started to go into a transition, kind of like a revolution, what I see right now happening in the United States. Things didn't, look good anymore. So when I came here, I noticed the difference between this country and my country.
I'd love to dive a little more into that, and we'll talk about the transition further. But early on, Chavez wasn't in the picture yet. So what was that? What are some of your sweet early childhood memories, pre-Chavez, pre this one vote to socialism, and down that long path?
Well, before Chavez, like I say, the country was, it was good. It was good. Venezuela was peaceful. My parents had my father had his business. He was a business owner. He's an entrepreneur in Venezuela. All my family, pretty much, my father's side of father's side, they were business owners. It was peaceful, Growing up in Venezuela was peaceful. My mom and my dad were always close. We were, a close family, very close family. We got to go everywhere together. My mom carries us everywhere in Venezuela, all our vacations. My dad was not a lot there most of the time because he was working a lot. But it was beautiful. It was a beautiful country. Still, it is a beautiful country, But
What are some of? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I was just gonna say, what are some of your earliest memories of that transition when you started to notice things feel different here? And how old were you at the time when you started to notice those changes?
Well, it started, I started to notice everything was going really, really bad at the age of 16. We had a lot of problems in Venezuela with our universities. Every time something would go off, like let's see, the price of the gasoline will go up, and the prices of the transportation the prices will go up. You will have the universities coming out and raising hell, burning tires, blocking the streets, protesters everywhere. The government always, fighting with the population. It was pretty, at the age of 16, I started to notice them. A lot of change started to change. A lot of things started to change. I noticed too that our universities was a lot of communism infiltrating on our universities. I didn't understand in the moment why was that happening? Why we had so many communists? And, we call it la izquierda, the left over there, what you guys call also the left, will be always the one ahead of all the protests in Venezuela. So that was something when, in the moment you didn't understand, I didn't understand because I was so young. My dad tried to educate us, but you were young and you were really, no matter what my parents were telling us, we still were like, what does this mean? But now that I'm here, I understand everything exactly what was happening there and what's happening here. So that's pretty much, some of the things that I remember in that transition.
With what you're describing there, I feel like a lot of Americans would be able to relate to what you're describing in the initial stages of that transition. What was the final straw for you in Venezuela that made you decide to immigrate to the United States? And what did that transition look like for you?
Well, I tell you, believe it or not, it was crime. The crime started kind of coming up, and it was good to be in a good area, and then but as soon as you step out of that good area, things were not that good anymore. I can only imagine how it is today. If it back then was still, you always have to watch your back, and as soon as I moved here, everything changed. From the very first time I moved to this country, I never forget when I stepped a foot out of the airport. It was amazing how everything was so different. Even the air that you smell was different. Everything was so different. But I noticed right away how I was no longer in that moment watching my back like I was in my country. So that was a huge impact for me. Something that it called my attention and it could change my life for good.
This is an odd question probably, but what was your first experience going into like an American store or supermarket? What were some of the culture shock elements that you experienced coming to the States?
Well, how big the stores were here, that shocked me. All the stores was huge. You have so many things to pick from different type of milks, from cereals. I mean, it was pretty overwhelming in the beginning. Wow, that was just something that we had over there, but not in the biggest scales that we have here. How everything was open all the time, 24/7. You have a place to go and eat. There was some grocery store open, 24/7. A lot of things open. So that really kind of like it was different. It was different in a good way. It's different. So
You're a business owner. You
yes.
have two successful businesses in North Carolina. What was that process of opening those businesses in the States? And how did that compare to just experiences in Venezuela with your father's business?
Well, I gotta give you a good example. I teach martial arts, right?
I
I
studied
live very.
Krav. I haven't done jujitsu yet. My husband and I want to, but I've done a little bit of Krav Maga.
Oh, you should try Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, a second degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Um, I teach martial arts for a living, right? And I get to live in a very nice home, right? Very nice vehicles. This is how I take care of my family by just teaching martial arts. I mean, that's something that, it's like I get to pay, I get paid to teach martial art. Sometimes I look at it, I get paid to, to do something that I really love. And it's not really that much that I have to do. I just go there a couple hours, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night, and I have a very successful business, and I support my family by just doing that. That just to me is you can't do that in a third world country or somewhere else that I know. But in here you can't actually do. I live in a very nice home. I drive very nice vehicles. You know, I pretty much do everything I always wanted to do because the job that I have. So that right there is different. When my father had his business, he was pretty much working 24/7. I couldn't see sometimes my dad in our vacations because he was always working. It was still good, but it's not as good as it is here. Like my story, I teach martial arts and I'm able to live a very, very comfortable life. So that to me is a big, huge difference.
We're in the midst of COVID-19. We're seeing oppression of small businesses leading towards a socialist agenda. Why is small business so threatening to the socialist platform, and why is it so essential to a free society?
Well, you got to understand, the small business, I believe it will be something for the government, hard for the government to control, because you might have some restaurants that, like myself, I have a restaurant too, right? In a gym in my academy. I'm pretty sure, I'm not saying that I don't believe what's going on, but I am not the type of person that I follow pretty much what everybody's telling you to do. So go figure. You have too many people like myself. How it's going to be really hard for the government to control you. But if you allow the big corporations to be running the economy, it's going to be easy for them, to play however the government want to do. And socialists pretty much when the government control the private sector. So I think that's got to COVID is going to be playing a big issue here. How we destroy our economy, it's number one thing that I believe they're doing right now. In order to bring socialists to the nation, you have to destroy the economy. By having a terrible economy, it will be easy for the people, like you are seeing right now, depend on the government. Venezuela went through socialism because we were going through in the middle of a bad recession. I believe close to a depression, but it was really bad. So what did politicians do? They took advantage, in this case with Chavez, they took advantage of that and offered the population, hey, all you have to do is give me all your freedoms and everything, and I will take care of you. That's pretty much what I'm seeing right now, if you look at it. The economy is getting completely destroyed. The big corporations are getting bigger. And the small persons, like small business owners, are going to have to wait for a stimulus check. A lot of people, I noticed for a fact, a lot of people that I know personally, in the beginning, they didn't want to go back to work because they were actually receiving more money by collecting unemployment. So by doing that, you're laying the grounds for what's going to come. People are not going to want to drive. People are not going to want to go to work if the government keep printing money. In Venezuela, they were printing a lot of money. Now our money in Venezuela is not worth anything. So I think COVID is a good weapon to bring tyranny. I honestly think.
We've seen a lot of government overreach, unconstitutional overreach during COVID by many state governors. You talked about the economic component, the need for economic despair in order for socialism to effectively come in. What are some of those other components that have to be in place in order to really effectuate a systemic socialist system?
Say it again. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No, I'm sorry, I stuttered there. What are some of the other elements that you would have to have in place in order to effectively implement a systemic socialist system?
Well, what you're seeing right now, the biggest weapon politicians understood to put in place, fear. You have to bring fear. Fear is a weapon that's been used for decades, centuries. The fear is going to be the weapon that these people are using to allow you to surrender all your freedom without questioning because you want to be safe. So that's on top of everything now, fear is the main weapon that they're using right now for people to be willing to surrender their freedoms in exchange for a little bit safe. They're willing to give all their freedoms, and that's wrong. And we will pay for that eventually.
How did you see that fear used in Venezuela in order to implement socialism?
Well, the fear in Venezuela was Chavez telling us that, if the rich man got richer, we were eventually going to be out on the street, and we did eventually, begging for food, and people were going to, keep losing their homes, and nobody was going to be able to succeed, to get better. So that fear that they put in our nation, it was about, how the rich man was getting richer, how the rich man was taking advantage of us. And, people play into that and decided to start a revolution. That's pretty much what I'm seeing right now here too.
With socialism, I feel like, and even myself years ago, but a number of Americans feel like this is a relatively abstract concept. It's just an economic system. However, I just saw a stat from PragerU that in 2016, over 75% of Venezuelans lost 19 pounds because of the lack of food. So how real is this for people?
Well, this is they call it the Maduro diet. That's what they call what you just say. It's well noticed by the Maduro diet. Yeah, people gotta understand. I give a little good simple. Uh, Anytime we had a hurricane that came to the region, I will tell my kids and my wife, and some friends, like if we had a hurricane that affect the area, things will be completely shut down. You will see lines in the grocery store, sometimes to get water, to get gasoline, to get, food and medicine. So I will tell my kids and my wife and some friends, this is exactly what will happen here when this socialist, and let's be honest with this. This is a problem that I've seen, and I hope that I am one of the pioneers to start pushing the actually real, true narrow. Socialism was a disguise to bring communism. We need to stop calling this BS socialist. Because if we keep doing that, they're going to keep playing this over and over and over. See, a lot of people are not afraid when you say socialist or you say democratic socialist. Their intention is communism. Because the moment you put a socialist government in place, they are not going to surrender that power back. We got to be realistic on that. So I think we as Americans, people like myself, need to start calling that for what it is. It's communism. Don't call it socialist anymore. Go straight to the point. It's communism.
You just spoke to this, but many Americans say this can't happen here. I was having a conversation with family members and they're like, oh, elections come, elections go. It's always the same. And I was like, yeah, well, that's, what they said in Russia. And that's what they said. Like, what is your response as someone who has seen this firsthand? Can this happen here? Can this actually happen in the United States?
Well, let me tell you a little story that I tell. Every time I get that, I, I get a lot of backlash. I mean, people push back on this when I start talking. Especially a lot of Americans, they're, comfortable. They're never being anywhere. They're the ones that are kind of like, you have a little hard time to get through them because they've never been anywhere. They're probably successful. If they've ever been somewhere, it's vacation, that doesn't count. When you go to another country just to do a vacation, little vacation, that doesn't qualify for you to understand the struggle of that person going in that nation. So you actually have to go through leaving that nation to understand. And when I came to this country, I remember I was working in Miami, and I was working with this person. His name was Ruben. He was a Cuban. And we were in a lunch one time, and we were talking, about what was going on in Venezuela. And Ruben came to me and said, Venezuela, Jonathan, he called me, that Venezuela will become the next Cuba in Latin America, in South America. And I never forgot, you don't understand, I never forgot this. I laughed. And I said, Ruben, that would never happen. Venezuela is a republic. In the time, Venezuela was a republic. We have branches of government. We have a border. We have oil. We have gold. We have diamonds. United States of America have too much interest on Venezuela. There's no way that Venezuela will fall into something like that. In your case, you're a little island in the middle of nowhere. All you guys have is sugarcane. That's the reason that happened. Nobody cared about it. But that would never happen in Venezuela. I remember telling him that. I tell you one thing, if I see him today, I think I'll put my head down and I say, I'm so sorry. You know, I am so sorry. My ignorance in that moment took me by surprise. And here we are today, seeing how Venezuela went from one of the richest countries in South America to one of the poor countries in the world.
I honestly don't have a response to that because that's just such it's just so real. Jonathan, looking at the United States, what is your heart for this nation? What do you want to see for America?
The first thing I would love is for Americans to understand how great this nation is. This nation is not as racist as these politicians are pushing. This nation is the most gifted nation in the world. This nation is the most opportunity that you're ever going to find somewhere are in this nation. It was safe when I moved here. It was beautiful. And it is. And Americans don't understand. They haven't taken this for granted. They don't comprehend how bad would that be if your rights are taken away from you. Our Second Amendment got taken away from us. Our Constitution got taken away in reform. And that's what I see right now here. And I would love for that not to happen. When I came to this country, I never forgot seeing that beautiful American flag in the airport. It's big. And the wind blowing that American flag. Man, I was so happy when I saw that. And the more I understood this nation, I fell in love just to think about it. Every time I would go back to Venezuela, it only took 4 weeks, and I wanted to come back here. It's what I got into what we call Americanized. I love to be here. I love how safe it was, how beautiful it was, how people were welcome. And let me tell you, there's nothing is perfect. I don't say this nation is perfect, but I tell you, it was great when I moved here. And I wish that more Americans understood. I had no reason to be here, sitting here, talking with you. I had two business. I am very busy today. But I feel the need, like I said in the beginning, I could have just sit back and watch this all falling and be a bystander, or get involved and to start getting more Americans involved to not allow this to happen, what happened in my nation before I moved here. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to wake more Americans to not allow this to happen in one of the greatest nations in the world. Because let me tell you something. If America fall, there will be no place for us to go. There will be no more immigrants trying to do everything in their power to move here. That right there should be a big statement to all American citizens that are born here. How many immigrants are willing to risk everything, change their culture, not see their families, move everything they knew from childhood to come here? That right there is a big statement for all Americans to understand. This, we need to keep this country the way it was and not change it.
Jonathan, you have two successful businesses here. You said yourself you have a wonderful home, good cars, you're able to provide for your family. And in the midst of that, you've decided that you're going to run for Congress in 2022. That that to me doesn't sound like a step up. That sounds like a lot of work. Would you mind telling me about that sacrifice and that transition?
Well, put it this way: I have two successful business, right? My the way I see it, if I'm a bystander, I can just go ahead and run my business, keep doing my thing, making sure that I keep making money, or I can just no longer do that and risk. You understand? I'll be risking a lot. You know, having the business, you're dealing with a lot of people from different political ideologies. You know, people will come after my business to try to destroy my name, my business. because I don't agree with their political ideologies. So this is a risk that I'm taking to destroy probably everything that I worked so hard because some people were not aligned with what I believe. So this is big. This is something that I'm pray about it, and I'm thinking strongly that it's a call that I have to do. I have to be you know the person where I live to stand up and get more people like myself and conservatives to start getting engaged and active. One of the biggest things that conservatives do, like myself, we do not get involved. We don't get involved. And by not getting involved, we allow these corrupt politicians to take advantage and destroy this great nation. So my thing right now is, yes, I am going to run for Congress for my district 7. It's not because I wanted to do this. It's because I need and I feel in my heart to stand up and be the voice for a lot of people that forgot Americans in this county, in this country, and maybe start a revolution and make other immigrants like myself to get involved and preach their stories to Americans to see I don't need to be here, but I have to be here to wake more people and get engaged. That's what we need to do. Get engaged. Not to say, oh, okay, the elections are over, everybody go back to work. No. We got to understand, hold politicians accountable when they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And I would love, if I get elected to Congress, to people come after me and hold me accountable if I'm not saying and doing the thing that I'm supposed to do. And that's what we need to do. We need to get engaged and not just go back to our business after this election, no matter what happened, and say, let's just all go back to work. It's a big problem that I see in this nation. And that's the problem why these politicians are getting away with this, what they're doing today.
Jonathan, it honestly seems a bit unfair that you and other immigrants that I have spoken with have gone through this once before, come here, and now you're the ones who are taking the front line in fighting against this. To me, that sounds exhausting. I wish you the very best in your contest for Congress. But with that, and you've spoken to this a little bit already, but what is the message burning in your bones for Americans? What's that kernel of truth that they're needing to be able to engage with these issues right now that they simply have not captured or held on to?
Well, anytime you see a politician that doesn't obey the Constitution, that's a red flag. Every single time you see a politician that doesn't do what they say, they promise during campaign they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and as soon as they get elected, they don't do what they're supposed to do. That right there is because we as citizens are not involved in engaging to be active in our community. That's the problem. That's why these politicians are going to getting away with things. We have a lot of politicians that look really good on paper, but in reality, they're not doing what they're supposed to do because they go to Washington, D.C. to become career politicians. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have not only here, all over the world. When you have politicians becoming career politicians, they stay there for more than 10, 20 years. That's a problem that we need to start fixing. And it got to start, maybe the immigrants like myself are the ones that need to get, like you're saying, the front line and take, the initiative to wake up American citizens.
Jonathan, it is an absolute honor to have you on today. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, what I would tell Americans is what I tell everybody. I watched this movie before, but it was in Spanish. I'm watching it now in English. So beware. One day, we'll all go look back and be like I was when that Cuban citizen spoke to me. And I laughed, and I thought this would never happen. And here we are. I say it one, and I'm going to say it again. I watched this movie before in Spanish. I know a lot of people are going to say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. If they're going to find excuses to what I'm saying doesn't make any sense. But I hate to say it. You will see it. They will come after your Second Amendment. They will come after your First Amendment. And when those two fall down, there's no reason for the other ones. So that's my message to all Americans. I watched this movie before in Spanish. I'm watching it in English now. Please, wake up and don't allow this to happen in one of the greatest nations in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for being a truth speaker. Thanks for being a frontline runner and standing up for us in this regard. It's an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us today with the Got Freedom podcast. Remember to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We are now on Parler, so I look forward to seeing you there. got-freedom.org.